Hello, everyone. Welcome to this segment of Industry Insights by G2, which features hot takes and actionable advice from business leaders around the world. This is a professional spotlight with Alex Shevelenko, CEO and co-founder of RELAYTO, a content experience platform. My name is Alexandra Vasquez, Senior Content Marketing Specialist at G2, and I'm really excited to share this chat with you all and speak with you today, Alex. Thank you so much for your time.
No, I'm thrilled to be here, Alexandra, and I'm thrilled to be speaking up on behalf of G2, which is one of my favorite platforms as an entrepreneur. So excited to be here.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that. So today, Alex and I will be discussing building trust in the buying cycle. But before we jump too deep in there, let's start with some icebreaker questions. So
Absolutely.
Alex, what is your favorite beverage?
I have coffee in my blood, so I think that answers it. Coffee, and I think coffee is just a symbol for energy, and I think I want to bring energy at work.
Great. And to get to dip our toes into the work stuff, what was your very first job?
My very first job, funny enough, was as a we came when I was a teenager to the U.S. and really like as a refugee family, and so my settled in Washington State, Seattle area, and I really needed the money. But I was too young. I was, I think, 14, and there weren't like the state limit was something like 16 where you could start getting, jobs at the time. And one of the jobs that was allowed was to go and work for the Washington Department of Roads and clean up the highways and the freeways from garbage, clutter, and recyclables. So I had one of those working basically garbage men, but like it had those like orange hats and men at work signs, and I would kind of come out. And it really was beautiful to remember that, like the humble beginnings. Obviously as an entrepreneur, you have to be the one cleaning up the kitchen, and as a parent as well. And so that sort of cleaning up, and also it was just kind of shocking the amount of stuff that people would just throw out without thinking. And lastly, Washington State is beautiful, just the nature there. And so just this contrast is something that, makes me really aware of, responsibility we have to take care of each other and the beautiful world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that must have been a really interesting opportunity to learn so much and to learn so much about yourself, and must have been very humbling as well. So you got to start somewhere. So that's
You got to start somewhere, right? And by the way, I was like incredibly proud of myself. This is the fun part because it was like I was able to contribute to my family, and at the time it was, we were just starting out, so everybody was doing what they could. So that was I felt like it was a privilege. That's the thing that's kind of, now, looking back, it's like that's interesting, right? It's all a matter of perspective. And it is a privilege, right? Because if you can make it through a tough spot, or you can have unglamorous gigs at the beginning, then you help other people at the start of their career, kind of to put that in perspective and show that, hey, there's a path forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you're pretty deep into your career, I would say, what are some of your best time management hacks that you've learned?
Well, I love audiobooks. I was a voracious reader and wanted to consume all the important ideas. And I never had enough time, so I kind of eventually just moved to using it when I'm doing the dishes now, or the equivalent of the garbage pickup. I have the added incentive that I can like swap on either AirPods or Shogs, and I'm like using Audible and similar tools to listen to stuff. Even when I swim, I have like a swim swimming waterproof things, and it's really great because it allows me to not get stuck in my world, get new ideas from people that are 100 times smarter than me. And I think ideally, if you have like ears, so something, but your hands are free, you might even apply that idea right away, like write it down, sometimes pause whatever I'm listening to and give a shout to somebody on my team. It's like, hey, this is just amazing idea I've heard. And so I find that this is a continuous stream of productivity hacks. And also I just love it, right? So it's enjoyable. It's not a hack for the sake of the hack. It's just consuming ideas is great. But I found problems with this, and this is actually one of the opportunities that we see is, sometimes audiobooks is not enough, and you kind of want to go and like consume that same bit, or some part of it and do something when you're kind of right in front of your computer. So we're trying to make the best of sort of podcast and audio snippets and video snippets with reading so that you could turn these ideas into action a lot more. And so that's my hack. I don't think it's perfect, but I think we're going to figure out a solution where you could take the best of this new medium of consuming short videos or short audios and kind of make them actionable. Because, you could listen to TED Talks all day long and not do anything because they're just talks, right? And so if you can find a way to convert talk into action, that's that's the productivity hack from my view.
Yeah, I totally agree. I operate on podcasts kind of the same way you do with audiobooks. So I'm a big fan of a good audio medium for when I need to get my brain going. What are some of your favorite software in your current tech stack?
Well, look, I mean, I think this will sound self-serving, obviously, but I genuinely love what we're building with RELAYTO. And I personally use it more than anything else, besides email, I would imagine, right? Like, so the email that is still part of it. But the reason I can say that with confidence, this is a product that, I built, somebody who first real gig was at Microsoft Office, launching Office 97. So, so going all the way back after that glamorous start as a garbage collector, and seeing how we can use tools like Google Slides or PowerPoint and and Docs as an interactive experience and creating more engaging content for me was really important, to create something compelling throughout my career, whether it's in consulting or marketing. So I, you know, co-founded Related to scratch my own itch, and I am, still not no longer the biggest QA tester, but no longer the biggest user. But whenever I get a chance, I love creating something for our own needs or for customers' needs. And really,
Yeah, I mean, I say if you don't use it yourself, how are you going to convince other people to use it? So I don't think
we
there's
call
anything
it
wrong with that.
drinking our own champagne and eating our caviar. That's
Yeah, we say the
absolutely,
same thing,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um, and then to close out our intro questions, what are some like minor problems or issues at work that kind of make you want to just like throw your laptop, like you're done for the day?
I don't. I think there was an accident one time where my laptop did fall, and it was very unproductive few days after that. So I not it was not through a throw. So I would never throw my laptop, just to be very transparent on that. And I think look, we all have our triggers. I think I'm impatient, right? Like as anybody who kind of wants to uh, you know do something meaningful with their life. I think there's a rush to get it done, and I think um, I like to think things to move faster. But I'm becoming through one of those podcast slash audiobook directions. I'm really focused on developing more attributes of a stoic leader that kind of is able to be aware of the emotion that, hey, I want to throw out my laptop, and then like ask myself, is that the most productive feeling that I could be having now? And then how can I channel that into something that's healthy? And I think that's a journey, to be honest. And the more you kind of are prone to throw the laptop, the more actually it's important to be able to become aware of this. So I would say not perfect at this, but I think this is my focus. And I think one of the I think responsibilities of an entrepreneur is to kind of provide both provide positive energy. But typically, the people that have positive energy and they could, when things go wrong, they could be like go the opposite way. And I think that may work for me, like in motivating myself, but it certainly wouldn't work for my team. And so I want to be better at, being able to, contain these emotions to myself and, make them productive.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that self-awareness is very important, especially in a leader. So I'm happy to hear that that's really important to you. So shifting gears a little bit, let's dive a little bit into the meat of the conversation. So I'd love to ask you first just a question about Relate to.
Mhm.
Um, so, I was looking at some things that you've mentioned about your co-founding of Relate to, and something you had mentioned was that you co-founded Relate to abolish static pre-internet and pre-mobile content on screens. So what were some limitations or challenges that you had encountered that made you want to come to that conclusion? And how are you still continuing to carry out that mission?
Well, let's have some fun. Like I'll just kind of illustrate what I mean by it in a way that's without demoing relate to, which is probably what I would normally do. But like imagine you're you sort of have this very important idea. You worked on it for super long time. You're kind of your company's future depends on it, or your campaign depends on it, or you're staking a lot of your last month of work on it. Your sales deal depends on it. It doesn't matter what it is exactly, but it's important enough that you want the audience to engage with your idea, right? And engage could mean like consume it, be persuaded hopefully with something, or at least challenge it, interrogate with it, interact with it, and at the end make some sort of a decision or movement towards something, right? Like that's why we communicate. That's why we're, as a civilization, humans have that as an advantage compared to other species. Is this is one of our strengths, is that we can communicate at scale. And when I look at, for example, a document that is produced, that's sort of, let's say, conventional document, right? It has this sort of, in the physical world, it's kind of like it has this low energy, like it sort of like talks like this. It's like, oh, my name is Alex, and I created this document, and I hope you can read the 200 pages. Let me know if you have feedback on page 154, and yes, and oh, by the way, here's another attachment with four other documents and five links to videos. And yes, please let me know how it goes. Like that's the energy that we're putting out there. And this is kind of embarrassing. It's sad. It's undermining all the good work that we're doing. So there's like loss, but basically if we're paying money to promote that message and it looks like that, and it feels like that, it's got this sort of low energy. It doesn't help. It's money thrown out. It doesn't really do anything. People don't engage with this, right? And oftentimes you see these, expensive LinkedIn campaigns promoting some sort of ebook, and then people download the ebook and it's just like, just shoot me now, right? Like, type, I don't want to read it. So that's sort of what I mean, right? They're not designed for the screens that we consume the content on. They don't use modern media. They still think, the original white paper was created by Winston Churchill, right? And they kind of like roughly look like a digital version of that white paper, and was a few minor improvements, I would say, right? Now, if you look at the same time, you look at, say, when I was in Microsoft 97, um, launching sort of the Office, intranet capability, etc. Like the documents have not improved that much from that era, but the websites, you know, they're just, you can't recognize it, right? They're engaging and so on. So our idea is very simple. Like the most important ideas still tend to be in the documents and the substantive presentations, and they also have trust because they're more substantive, right? By the way, just by the layout of it. But then they don't work because there's this sort of breakdown in consumability of it. And that's what we are, on a mission to solve for, is like give these important ideas a fair chance Because right now the ideas that are winning are shallow. They're kind of short form, non value add things that distract us. Like it's the sugar that is like, not good calories for our minds, and we want nutrition, right? Like, but then, nutrition needs to look good, it needs to taste good, it needs to align with our goals and our image and what we want to consume. And as, unfortunately, the more important, the bigger the idea, the worse it's communicated today. And that's what we want to help people with. Does that resonate with you at all, Alexandra?
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me, really making something that's become bigger and more difficult, more digestible for the customer. I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I think it really keeps up with what people are expecting these days from their software.
Yeah, and we'll probably touch this later, but I think one of the topics is trust, right? And so, what's really interesting is there's this paradox, right? Like people will trust the types of things that are humanized, but yet have evidence behind them. And you can't have evidence in a, clickbaity stuff, right? Like this is kind of the counter to evidence. So if you want to kind of do some hacking of minds and do some short-term gains, you could kind of get people to look at some clickbaity type of content or spammy emails, etc. But if you really want to build a trust, you have to find a balance between like how do I provide evidence without boring people to tears, and then give them the ability to test that evidence, but only in a way that they care about, right? Like I don't want to go through page 198 like that. I want to, 54. I get there right away. I don't need to flip, and hurt my fingers, flipping through a 100-page book to find the nugget that I need.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue, as you mentioned, to our next question, which is really jumping into a little bit more about the buyer's journey,
Mhm.
and how many touch points that there are throughout the buyer journey. How do you ensure that those trust building strategies are coherent and seamless and understandable for the customer throughout all these different stages of the buying process?
Yeah, and I think you've kind of the key word that you've said is all the stages, right? So I think the fundamental uh, complaint that I've heard since pretty much I started in business is, oh, marketing doesn't talk to sales, sales doesn't talk to marketing, support doesn't talk to either enough, right? And obviously, the more the world is moving to subscription-based models, like we're in that world together with G2 and a lot of your company, a lot of your companies. It's essential to always be engaging your customers, expanding, and making sure they're successful across the journey. And so what we see our most successful customers do is that they actually stop thinking in silos. And typically there is even if you kind of hear the terminology, there's a sales tech stack, and then there's a MarTech stack, and then there is a customer success stack, and then designers have their own stack. And they don't talk to each other, they use different stacks, right? Like if you came to a sales rep and said, oh yeah, well, I'm going to send you Adobe InDesign file and you just tweak it, right? Which is the premier tool for a sophisticated designer. The sales rep is going to go, what is this thing, right? Like I could barely use PowerPoint, right? Like, and I think this is one of the ways in which we're we see the world as different, is that if you give a designer, a marketer, and a sales rep a same way to connect, right? Designer for the first time in their life could provide data-driven design, so they could get feedback on whatever they've created and actually see if it's working, right? And that is a revolution in this profession. I think the best designers are going to go in that way, and marketers are already kind of want to go that way, and they kind of do this in their maybe email tracking and website tracking. But when it comes to documents or presentations, for example, they are blind. And so fundamentally, they can sort of now, create custom call to actions and drive results from their content. And so that's how we see another touch point, from, the very front of the customer, that's has a high-end design production values is being used in marketing. And that marketing asset could be middle of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, or it could be sometimes relevant to a new customer who is just ramping up on like what's going on, or a new user of the customer, right? And so it helps expansion. And so we typically see that the best teams, have, typically marketers driving the content creation with the support of designers, but are able to feed that content across the sales journey, across the customer journey. That's what we focus on. We think that's the most obvious gap, because there you do need, CRM for one thing, and you do need some sales engagement tools. But content is sort of like, if you think of it, it's just it's blood. It flows through the veins of the customer journey. And it's kind of, you could see it on the best example, I think, of this is like in railroad tracks. Like there are some railroad tracks that are kind of built, was this dimension, and others that are built was this dimension. So you have to kind of stop, and move the cargo across the tracks, kind of like, and it's just this like extra, incredibly crazy step. And if you can avoid it, and it's meant to be avoidable, it's much better for the business, and frankly it's much better for the customer, right? And like, if you can, and what the reason it does, like where we see it fall down, is so marketing create, oh yeah, we created the stuff, but sales team doesn't know about it, or it doesn't look compelling enough, and then they don't end up, bringing it to the customer. And the same goes with the customer success teams. They kind of just, they say, oh yeah, here's our product manual, go to page 54, and by the way, here's 5 other videos for this. And this is sort of just counter to the way the modern buyer wants to buy, counter the way the modern customer wants to engage with their vendors. And for whatever reason, this is persisting, and especially in B2B businesses. I think it's much better in the consumer businesses that are, that have they can't afford this. And we at Relay to believe that this sort of single journey is of the lifeblood through content in particular, is the key to creating the modern buyer experience that actually scales and works.
That's amazing. And I completely agree. And, building off of that modern buyer experience, right? So
Mm-hmm.
at G2, we'd like to think that online reviews are a huge part of the new way that people are looking for
Mm-hmm.
software. So how do you personally at Relay to encourage and manage customer feedback to enhance that credibility in the buyer experience?
Well, look, so we love G2 exactly for the reason that we want to hear from our customers. And we are very fortunate that we have, on the one hand, we have some enterprise customers that are, premium, very, relatively enterprise grade solution and service, but we have a free tier, and we have a kind of entry level tiers as well. And so we encourage, our customers that we love, that we know are, kind of give us good feedback, sometimes give us like, they're really engaged with the product deeply. So they'll give us like, hey, you got to work on this to help us achieve this goal or another. So we think giving them a platform to provide that feedback is really helpful. But also we think new customers, right, which is, really interesting for us, new users getting feedback from them is also helpful. So because this allows us to kind of think broadly, and like, how do we simplify and create a more of a product driven process versus a sales driven process. And so that feedback is essential, right? Like, I think it's just and people don't want to spend that much time giving that feedback, even to me sometimes, right? Like, but having an anonymous platform is great. So G2 provides that. I think we also found that we're building a new type of company, which is you would call it no code SaaS platform. So if you're building something that's no code, by definition, that could take you in different product directions. right? Like we are a leader in categories like content experience and content creation and flip books, so that's sort of maybe content side, but also in things around sales, right? And digital sales rooms as an example. And so um, it's interesting for us to see different, like, allow customers to go feedback, particularly on their use cases, right? And where they're using it. And we personally think our success depends on people using it across a range of use cases, like we discussed, right? Like the from design to and marketing to sales. So we need even more reviews, right? And so anybody who has a horizontal product can't just get, oh, I got a review from this one customer, had an informal chat. Like, no, this is not going to help you make internal decisions. So I think so we benefit from that, and I think it also allows us to be more transparent with our customers. And I think this goes back to this kind of the question of trust, right? Like, who do you trust more? Do you trust a vendor to say, hey, we are awesome, right? Like, we're just absolutely the best. Trust us, like I, hire a bunch of salespeople, have a bunch of steak dinners, and golf. I don't play golf, I would rather, I don't, sorry, I admit it, this is not my thing. So I would just much rather have customers speak up and have a voice in both shaping our direction and influencing other customers. I think G2 is doing this at scale. Personally, I've learned this from Salesforce. One of my when I was a student at Stanford, I was very fortunate to intern at Salesforce, and I was part of some of their early, event magic that they were creating, and now they're fortunately a customer of ours, so we see the community they've built. And so there's a way to create customer interactions through scalable channels, through maybe more personal channels, but it's incredibly powerful. And what G2 is doing is unlocking that um, for lower end entry point users, right? Because not everybody can go to a five-star hotel luxury event where customers meet customers, right? But you need that tool to make sure it's the right solution for you. Now, having said that, what's important is once you have these reviews, right? Once you have the reports, how do you make how do you make people consume it? This is where we think, we can help people build that trust. So like plug in your G2 widgets into Relay to Pitch, right? Plug in the report that you have into your, make it engaging so people can consume it, versus just a PDF version. So I think that's interesting as well, is how do we provide something that G2 does, like make that live in other places where the reviews could be shared outside of even G2, right? Through a regular sales process.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm happy to hear that G2 really helps you build that trust with the customer even before they might reach out to you for information on the product. And shifting gears a little bit, I think it would be a big misstep to not touch a little bit about AI, which is on everyone's mind right now. And with technologies like AI, chatbots that are
Mm-hmm.
coming up a lot in customer interactions, in
Mm-hmm.
the buyer process. How does RELAYTO strike a balance between those automatic interactions and maintaining a human touch?
So I think when people talk about AI, there's like different types of AI. So just to be very specific, so you can mention chatbot, and then there's sort of what we call, a set of AI and algorithmic approaches to what we do was content transformation. So let's talk a little the latter first. So um, we help we use AI for a number of proven data-driven ways in which you could take a static asset or conventional asset and using AI make it perform 100x better for you, whether it's, you're going, depends on your goals, of course, but it could be, marketing qualified leads moving to sales qualified leads, or if it's later in the process, conversion on win rates and so on. So and those techniques use AI. Like, how do we use a background video to instantly kind of, enliven something? How do we generate navigation that helps you jump directly to the pages that you care about, right? Like we talked about that earlier. And how do you create, how do you use our neural algorithmic approach to determining what's the best way to consume a particular asset? Is it something better to flip through? Is it better to scroll? Is it a presentation style asset? So we can make all those recommendations, but what's really important is we allow the creator still controls on whether they can use it, where they turn it on, turn it off, and that's sort of the superpower. So the AI is not a replacement for it. Can't, I think those tools that are say, oh yeah, we're just going to create a presentation for you, maybe it will work for your high school project, right? Like, but it's just not going to be the types of stuff that will be qualified for business users. But what we believe is you enable the creator to be smarter about, in our case, the experience layer of that content and augmenting that. Then that's AI as a superpower. And then you could add it with more traditional no code and other tools to supplement that are easy to use. So that's one part of AI. A separate one, I think we're was G2, I spoke to Godard on this, about Monty. I think we're brothers from another mother here. It was him, where we have developed a chatbot in a box that basically takes, you know, thousands of and thousands of pages, hundreds and hundreds of documents, allows you to read through them using AI to get to the one nugget on that one specific page immediately, right? And so imagine that you have a big library of content. It's maybe secured with certain provisions and permissions because it could be your content. It's like, so you don't want the world to do it. You don't want some crazy hallucinations in there from some other content. This is like specific to your content. It could be insurance documents, it could be legal, it could be, customer collateral, sales collateral that you would need an answer to. And then you immediately get to the one nugget, right? And imagine the alternative to that is trying to find the one document, then control F through that thing, forever and ever. And control F is just going to give you a word. So like, some words could be, in hundreds of pages. How do you know that's the substance? So we'll kind of generate, a summary of the answer, and it'll get you three or four specific pages across different assets with that. And I think that that's a future of consuming complex content, whether it's a presentation, PDF, native blog or document. And so we're fired up about that. So I think you obviously have done that for your content, and I think we're taking a very similar approach. But the cool part for us is that basically a customer doesn't need to do anything, right? They don't need to know whether that's open AI APIs or some other APIs. They know that it's sort of a safe solution. They plug in their content and the chat works out of the box, but without losing the context, without losing the substance, without losing the ability to validate and check, right? Because if the AI gives you an answer but doesn't provide a page or pages from which that answer came from, you could be making a huge mistake, right? And we are believers that people still need the power to check and validate and contextualize the answers, right? And I think that is the vision that we have for consumable AI, right? And then we talked earlier about the creator AI. Again, that's a partner for you to unlock your creativity. But I think the more creative the human, the more the more they could leverage AI tools that we provide or other folks provide, and we play with those very nicely. So that's our vision.
Amazing. Yeah, I've spoken to a couple leaders in the industry about this topic, and it seems like a lot of people are afraid about AI like taking jobs, and that's been a big thing that's been thrown out in the air. But from the consensus I've seen, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, is that leaders are pretty welcoming at the idea of using it to make the jobs more efficient. There's really nothing that can replace the human touch, but something to enhance the customer experience. AI could be used in a very smart way to do that.
Well, I think it's almost like a total no-brainer in terms of customer experience, right? Like, so if you kind of had a choice of like, okay, customer has an immediate question, and we can, by restricting what the base of answers could be for that question, we could, provide a very good answer to them that doesn't have, hallucinations. Is this going to increase a deal velocity? Most likely. Is this going to increase low friction resolution of customer support query? Most likely, right? Versus, oh, let me go through 15 different portals that you have, for this or for that. And if you're in the marketing, context, there are millennial buyers, right? There are people that are, very comfortable using these tools increasingly to get to a quick answer, and then they deep dive, right? And so I think the key to using AI is it doesn't replace the substance, right? It does need the references, it does need the evidence, but I think if you combine the human strength with that, customer consumability, or buyer consumability angle, there is like zero risk in that. And then the question is there some risk in relying too much on creation? I think there, like, if you don't oversee it, I think we've experimented, and we have some junior intern team members who use Chat GPT to create something, and we kind of looked at it and said, sorry, this is just not, this is not us, this is not our voice. It may be a starting point for something, but we want to deliver value, we want to be different. And I think the problem was, a lot of usage right now is it sort of goes to the lowest common denominator. So anybody who wants to create something that stands out needs to be thoughtful about, combining the AI with their own creativity, their own point of view.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And to close us out with a little bit of a looking forward question,
Mhm.
what are some future initiatives or innovations that you see in the industry that you think will further enhance that trust in the buying cycle?
Well, I think the number one trend that we see right now is that people are using platforms like G2. They're engaging more and more with a, let's say, ebook, to really drill in and understand what is the point of view of the author, or white paper, right? To really go in and build that trust that these folks are real experts, right? Versus, I think historically we've had this view that we're gonna write some spammy blog, using, outsourced people that, are just kind of regurgitating something that somebody else has done. And if we do enough of that, we're gonna drive, traffic, and that traffic is gonna succeed in, conversion and so on. I think Google is not going to allow that. And so I think in the world of AI, obviously, that is being commoditized, right? Like everybody can now, churn out, a spammy article quicker. And, people are just going to be dying, I think, in an ocean of information, but they're going to be still thirsty for authentic, interactive experience of some kind, right? And then the question becomes, how are you going to deliver that authentic, interactive experience? Are you going to deliver it through um, through interactions that are expensive, one-to-one touch, right? And potentially in some industries, that's the right answer, right? Like we have a customer that sells nuclear reactors, that is, you want to go there as soon as possible, right? But even in those conversations, that how do you make the conversation feel engaging and interactive versus a monologue type of presentation, right? So we believe the future is basically interactive, right? It's a conversation between two people, but I think now we're having a, genuine conversation through video, right? So that's one way. And imagine we were able to have this conversation like experience where, you're looking through and double clicking in certain areas and exploring other questions that are of interest to you. And you could have this on a one to few or one to many experience. And that's what G2 does, was reviews. And that's what we see happening in the world. I think the more you can create digital interactions feel like they're human versus churning out more spammy content that feels like machine only talking to another machine. I think that's where humans are going to thrive. And that's, back to trust, right? That's where, like, hey, here's a customer, hear them, right? Don't just see some anonymous quote and saying, hey, we're great, or see me saying how great we are at Relate to, hey, here's an example, check it out, experience it, right? Here's a demo, but you don't need to go through 15 steps, and talk to some, like, college educated sales rep that's been 1 month out of school and he's going to provide their perspective on the industry, right? Like, nobody wants that stuff. We could see that, or some spammy sequence. Like, go and experience, see for yourself, and then we can have a really great interactive conversation. And obviously, so that's just the customer experience, but also you could create these amazing interactive experiences and tools that will help that college grad, get smarter about the industry, add more value, kind of understand it, learn faster, right? So it's not this, I don't want to be dismissive of the role of the sales team. I think it's incredibly important in large strategic decisions. But I think the value add expectations of human interactions is much higher now, and they need to be supported with digital tools. And then, 95% of the buyer journey is going to be happening without human touch points. And the real fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves as an industry and as a society is, can we humanize these interactions? Can we create joy from them? Can we do something that, makes us excited about, what our work is, whether it's as a consumer, frankly, or as a creator, right? Because to create the 195-page PDF that we were talking about, like, that is just life sucking out of you. You're creating something, you're working on it, and nobody consumes it. That's not fun, right? Like, and why not go to that extra mile? I think so. Just bring humanity into digital and AI. That's fundamentally what, we think everybody should be zeroing in on, to be successful at really capturing the power that's within AI.
Thank you so much, Alex. That wraps up our professional spotlight with Alex Shevelenko of RELAYTO. For more industry insights content, check out our blog at learn.g2.com/tag/industry-insights. See you next time, and thank you so much again, Alex.
This was a lot of fun, Alexandra. Thanks for great questions.